So we're seeing breathing. They're just not responding to us. So we're just going to put them into that recovery position until help can show up. So let's go ahead and roll them into the recovery.
No. You're making this difficult on me, man. Oh, we're forgot it. That was my fault. All right. Oh, I didn't do the TV. Go back.
You want to TP the leg closest to you.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like this, right? No, straight.
So yeah, if you just think you're going to roll them towards you, you want to move all the body parts closest to you as well. So you'll put the leg closest to you and the TP, arm closest to you, up over the head.
There we go.
So everybody feel comfortable with that? All right, let's go ahead. We'll head back to our seats. One thing that I had not covered earlier is the testing part of the program. We are required after each section that we do to take a 10-question test, but I hate tests. So what we're going to do is we'll just go over the questions, we'll answer them as a group, and just make sure that we got everything covered that we need to get covered. Feel good?
That's a big order, though. Well, it is Russian.
She probably stopped for breakfast.
Yeah. She's polishing off all her drinks right now. A little Honda Civic.
Okay. Good Samaritan law. Anybody know what the Good Samaritan law is? What you got?
You can't get sued for going and helping someone that's in trouble.
Correct. If you know what you're doing, you're going to be all right.
Okay.
So what you're kind of looking at is what I'm teaching you today. You can go out into the world and you can do that. But I'm not going to teach you how to put in an advanced airway. I'm not going to show you how to use like a pin and put a trach into somebody's throat. If you decide, I know that's the next advanced class. But if you decide to do something like that, then you could be sued because you're not acting within the scope of your training. Other thing with the Good Samaritan law, everybody in here would be covered. It doesn't cover a health professional who's either volunteering or getting paid to provide health care. So if you're working in a nursing home, if you're a security guard and you have like a first responder certification, you are obligated to assist, you have the potential of being sued. So that being said, if you became a paid responder, you could be sued and the Good Samaritan law doesn't cover you. The way that you would become a paid responder is somebody's passed out on the floor, you roll them over, head tilt, chin lift, they start breathing, you've saved their life. And then you say, hey, I'll take $50 for that. You get a check from them, then you become paid and they could sue you for doing the care improperly. It's not against the law to request cookies or money, but if you take something like that in payment for taking care of somebody, you could be sued and the Samaritan law would not protect you. So it's a really good law to have. Some states, Indiana's not one of them, but some states make it a requirement to help somebody if you see it. That's part of their Good Samaritan law. So where in Indiana, if you see somebody laying on the ground and you don't feel comfortable, you could just keep on walking. Some states, if you see that, you could be arrested for leaving them. So the one thing I really want to get across in the class, though, is the ability to act, the ability to respond. Everybody in here, including myself, if you see somebody laying on the ground and they're blue, it's going to scare the crud out of you. You're going to not feel like you know what to do to save them. But I guarantee you, if you step over said blue person and walk down the hall, you're going to regret that for the rest of your life. If you decide to stop, if you decide to act, everything's going to start coming back to you. You've taken the class, you know what to do. It'll start coming back to you when you start looking at them. At least you've done something for them. And you're going to feel a lot better for at least having tried to save somebody than just walking past them. So if you get anything out of the class today, it would be, you know what you're doing by the end of this class. If you see a victim, try and help. Least you can do is just ask them if you can assist them. I had a lady the other day, I was walking through the park and she was laying face down. It was only about 60 degrees, so I didn't think she was sunbathing. And I was with my kids and I started walking past her myself. And it's like, you know, I can't do that. This is kind of what I teach. So I went back and stopped and tapped her and asked her if she was okay. And she was just laying out there smoking a cigarette, having just a little moment with herself, I guess. But I felt a lot better having stopped. And then my kids got to see that as well, and they kind of get that. So being Habitat people and AmeriCorps people, it's be a good example to set, to get out there and help somebody if you see it.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
If I may. So, and I was going to ask, so we're not obligated to help, but once we engage, we are obligated to stay with them until
Correct.
someone,
Yep.
a doctor or a paramedic or
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Somebody of a higher certification than you. Yeah.
I had an incident where a person obviously needed something. I said, do you need help? And they said, no. Is that enough, or should you try to expand on it until you make them say, I don't want your help?
Yeah, you might want to ask a few more questions. Because if you think about it, if they're not in their right mind, then
Right, that's what
they
I
need
was
help.
thinking, yeah.
Yeah. If they've been drinking, they can't refuse care. If they don't know, like, person, time, date, they don't know where they're at, they can't refuse care. So if you do ask a couple more questions, are you all right? No, leave me alone. Well, what's going on? Do you know where you're at? You know, I'm in Texas. Well, you're in Indiana. So things like that, you can start kind of figuring out what's going on. Worst case scenario, though, they keep telling you to get away. You're not going to get into a confrontation with them. That's where you would call 911. Stay a safe distance from them, but stay with them. And that's, again, where you don't just stay up in their face, just keep going, I can help, let me help, because then they're going to punch you. But if you stay back, get EMS there. Always get somebody else of a higher certification to come along, and they can take care of the situation. So, like with what you're saying, if you're performing CPR on somebody, there's only a few times that you can stop. Like if you're physically exhausted, when they say that, they want you to pretty much be passed out next to your victim. So when EMS arrives, there's 2 people they have to resuscitate. That's extremely exhausted. If where you're at becomes unsafe, a lot of times we talk about like if the building catches on fire while you're doing CPR, but another situation could be you've got somebody on the ground, you're doing chest compressions, and family shows up. They're screaming, asking what you're doing, and they start getting violent with you. That's happened in the past just because, you know, the family's freaking out. They don't know what's going on. You're the one there. They may take it out on you. That's an unsafe scene where you would want to stop doing CPR and get out of there as well. Somebody with a higher certification, again, if they show up. So if somebody comes up, they've never been taught CPR, you can't leave that person with them. You would need to wait for somebody who has taken this class or a higher class, and then you're good to go. But yeah, once you start, you're obligated. Now when we get into conscious choking, if you have a choking victim, you come up and you give them an abdominal thrust, piece of roast beef flies out of the mouth, and then they're fine, you're good to go. So something like that you could. And we're not doing a child's portion of it today, but if you do come across an injured child, if it's a life threat, you're going to want to save them, help them. They're bleeding, you're stopping the bleeding. Other than a life threat, you can't take the child's word. You have to get a parent or guardian before you treat that child. So make sure you're looking around at the playground to find mom or dad before you start messing with the kid. Are there any other questions on any of that? Let's see what else we got that we need to cover here.
What other adults might give permission, like as a teacher or something?
A teacher would be good. Daycare providers will usually get a signed letter from the parent before the kid's able to go to school there. So they could give permission as well. Worst case scenario, you always want to treat. It's better to save a life and ask questions later than to say, I didn't see mom, so I let them bleed to death. You're better to save them and then worry about that later.